And now is the time for the affirmative cross-examination of negative. Mr. Albrecht, you have 20 minutes to cross-examine Turretinfan. You may begin when you're ready.
All right, Turretinfan. I'm going to cover a little bit of something you wrote not long back on your blog. And I'm going to go ahead and read it to you beforehand. You wrote in regards to 1 Corinthians chapter 3, which is what I'll cover briefly before moving on to another passage. You wrote, "As you can see, it is a man's work that will be evaluated by fire and placed in the fire, not the man." Do you still hold to this position?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I'll ask you a simple question. If you'd like, you can disagree with it or not. I'm not basically saying it's a fact. I'm simply going to ask if you're aware that amongst church fathers that interpret this verse, Ambrosiaster, Augustine, Chrysostom, Theodoret, Caesarius, Origen, and Clement, amongst others, have all interpreted this as being the man who passes through the fire. Are you aware of this?
I'm very hesitant to say I'm aware or not aware of some
would you agree?
disputable things.
Would
yes.
you disagree with that?
I would say that the way to establish what they believed is by quoting what they said.
Okay,
so,
great.
Yeah.
I guess we can get to that in a bit. I'll ask you another question in regards to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Can you show me where in that verse that the man is separated from his works?
Well, it says, "Now if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest. For the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire." So, yeah, the text itself distinguishes between them.
Okay. Well, I definitely disagree, but going on, I guess that's why we cross-examine, right? We usually disagree on most of the points. But I believe that the clear reading of the text says that if any man's work is burned up, we literally read the Greek word tinos, literally any. I read that the person, the man himself, will be punished, will be penalized there. So as far as I can see, the work is connected to the man. Do you see this as well, or do you think that I'm stretching the text?
Yes, the text doesn't say the man will be punished. There's no word there, man will be punished in the text.
Okay, I guess. So you would disagree with the usage of the Greek word zemiao in verse 15, if I'm correct. You do not believe that this verse is in reference to the man being punished, right?
In this verse, I'm sure you know that zemiao is not. The meaning of the word is not to punish or to be punished.
Right, but I would argue that it definitely contains such a derivative as being punished. Would you not agree that suffer loss is punishment in and of itself?
That he shall suffer loss is punishment?
Is a sort of. Well, would you agree that suffer loss carries with it a sort of connotation of a penal, pretty much like somebody being penalized, if you will?
I would say this, that someone could be penalized by suffering loss, but people can suffer loss for other reasons as well.
Okay. I was wondering, since we're on the topic of separating a man from his works, could you read 1 John 3:7 out loud for one moment, if you have that in front of you?
I can get it in front of me quickly.
Sure.
There's 1 John 3:7.
That is correct.
Little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous.
All right, great. As you're well aware of, the Greek word for practice, or rather does in this passage, is poieo. So we see that the works, I would argue, are not separated from the man here. Would you agree that the works are not separated from the man?
Well, I think you asked me a minute ago about that same question, and I pointed out that the text clearly states the man in some cases and the man's works in other cases, thereby making a differentiation between the two.
All right.
Just be sloppy thinking to confuse man and works.
All right, I'll get back to that in just a bit, but in regards to 1 John 3:7, is this passage separating the works from the man?
All right, 1 John 3:7.
Yes, the one you just read.
Separating the works from the man.
That is correct.
Well, it doesn't, of course, it doesn't have the plural noun works here.
Right.
So, yeah.
One who does, though, the word does for poieo, does righteousness. You would disagree that this is a work. Righteousness. One who practices being righteous. That would not be a work in your mind.
Well, in the context of 1 John 3, it's talking about the manner of life of people. So, for example, it contrasts with verse 4, which says, "Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law." And so it's, we could get into a longer
right.
exegesis of it, but it refers to the manner of life, the way that they live their life.
Okay. I'll move on to another question now. I've got a load of them. In examining 1 Corinthians chapter 3, in verse 14, is the individual in this passage receiving the reward that is eternal salvation?
In verse
14.
1 Corinthians 3, sorry, I've got the...
No problem. 1 Corinthians
back
3:14.
to the wrong place. Sorry about that.
No problem.
It says, "If any man's work abide, which he has built thereupon, he shall receive a reward." Well, it doesn't appear to me that it's clear what that reward is, that he receives.
Okay, great. Then I'll move to the next passage. In verse 15, is this person saved in verse 15?
He himself shall be saved. Is that person saved? Is that your question?
That is correct.
Yes.
How is the person saved in verse 15?
How is the person saved?
That is correct.
The person is saved by Jesus Christ, see, as explained in verse 11.
All right. Exactly what does the passage say? How is the person saved in verse 15? Does it say that the person is saved by fire, or does it say literally that he is saved by Jesus Christ?
Oh, well, no, it doesn't say either one of those things. And it doesn't say, specifically, it doesn't say he is saved by fire. It says he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. In other words, but we might use the expression by the skin of his teeth. In other words, with nothing to spare.
All right. Of course, as you're well aware, the skin of his teeth is not there in the context. So I understand we may have differing views on exactly what the fire is. And of course, just to be clear, I wouldn't disagree with you that the fire is Jesus Christ. I've got no problem with that whatsoever.
I didn't say that the fire was Jesus Christ. I said that the expression means something similar to. It's an expression, a figure of speech.
Okay.
Yet so as by fire, and it means something like by the skin of your teeth. It's just a similar expression I'm offering up. I'm not saying the skin of your teeth is there, and I'm not saying that Jesus is the fire.
All right. Okay.
That's not it at all.
I'll move to another question. In verse 17, what happens to the person? Is he saved or is he destroyed?
If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are.
Okay, so he's destroyed pretty much. He does not receive salvation, right?
Well, it says he'll be destroyed. Whether that destruction is loss of his life or loss of or eternal punishment in hell, I would be hesitant to say just based on that one verse alone without looking more carefully.
So would you say that it's a possibility that the person in verse 17, even though we're told he's destroyed, he could be saved as well?
I'm hesitant to say what's possible without looking to see what the context says, but just the word itself, destroy, can have more than one meaning, as we saw before. I mean, God destroyed those.
Would you say that it's likely that this person is destroyed in the sense of receiving eternal damnation? Would you say that that is a likely interpretation of the verse?
Looking at this verse without carefully considering it, I can give you sort of my off the cuff. Here's my best guess at what it means. I'm not sure how helpful that would be to the discussion. I'm willing to tell you. Looking at it right now, it looks to me like it's saying that a person who defiles the temple of God is not holy, and the temple of God is holy. So, and that the people to whom Paul's writing are holy, or they're God's temple. So it seems as though it's saying that person is at least currently outside of salvation.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. So I guess the conclusion that we can reach here then, you didn't want to make a comment on the person in verse 14, even though I would contend that he is saved. But in verse 15, you do agree that the person is saved. And in verse 17, you seem to lean more towards the person being outside of the realm of salvation. Am I correct?
No. The person in 14 is someone who's saved.
Okay.
He's built on the foundation.
Oh,
so
great.
He's
Okay.
saved.
Okay.
The question is what that reward is a reference to.
Oh,
that
great. All right.
Reward could be referenced to something else.
Great. I just wanted to make sure I was under the impression that you did not think the person in verse 14 was saved. All right. Great. So the person in verse 14 and 15 are saved. And in verse 17, it seems like he is outside the realm of salvation for the moment being, if I'm correct, right? That is your position?
That's what it appears to me.
Okay, great. I'll move on to a question connected to this. Turton fan, do you agree that the usage of the Greek word puros in the New Testament and in the Septuagint is connected to purification?
The etymology of etymologically and sort of in terms of what its lexical meanings can include. Obviously it's the root word from which we get our word pure. So.
Okay, great. All right, no problem at all. It's perfect. All right. Turton fan, in verse 15, I'm going right back to Zemiao, we read that the man suffers loss. The Greek word Zemiao is present here. Would you disagree with me that the man in verse 15 is being punished? Would you argue that he's merely just suffering loss and he's not being punished at all?
Yeah. Yes. I'm sorry if that didn't come across. Yes, he's suffering the loss of his wood, hay, and stubble. It is actually to his benefit. Those are not good things. Those are things that are worthless. So the loss of something worthless isn't a punishment.
All right. Okay. Can you show me, since you are arguing that Zemiao in this instance is not referring to the individual being punished, could you provide one instance of Zemiao in the Septuagint or in the New Testament that does not refer to punishment?
No, I wasn't arguing that the word has no other, or has other semantic other uses within the scriptures that refer to some kind of purification that doesn't involve punishment. In other words, that there's not a link in terms of themes. In other words, you might find this word purify in connection with a theme of punishment or something like that in another place. I wasn't arguing that in other places those themes run together, just arguing that in this place there's no mention of punishment. So, yeah,
all right.
I was just letting this verse speak for itself, as opposed to arguing that the other verses say it. And all
right, an individual.
The example I would give of one. Go ahead.
Okay, an individual that. I'm going right back to the passage. We read that this individual suffers loss, and the Greek word hutos, he's saved. Yet so, I would argue, but only as to fire. You give a different analogy, I guess.